The desegregation process that took place in the 1950s and 60s produced raging racial turmoil surrounding the integration of the University of Tennessee's football program that would continue to seep into the 1970s. With the introduction of its first black quarterback, Condredge Holloway, the University of Tennessee experienced multiple successful football seasons that ultimately allowed a myriad of prior prejudices ingrained within the fan base to dissipate. In order to thoroughly appreciate the story of Condredge Holloway, one must look back 23 years prior to his athletic career.
In 1964, Andy Holt, the university's then current president, told UT's new head coach, Doug Dickey, that the time had come for the integration of the football team. Despite internal discussions calling for this monumental leap towards athletic assimilation, external voices maintained that football was a sport reserved for white players only. In 1965, the Knoxville News-Sentinel published this direct quote from an unnamed source who reported of racial stigmas directed towards an African-American player on the opposing team. Quote, "I lost interest in Tennessee football several years ago after seeing a game with Houston when some 60,000 Tennessee fans around me shrieked racist insults at Warren McBee, who happened to be black, playing on the Houston team." Ultimately, the university's first African-American player did not arrive until 1967 with the recruitment of Tennessee native Lester McLean. Only the convenient aspects of McLean's time at UT were broadcast to the general public. If one were to look past the fraudulent exterior of his career, they would find it marred by bigotry and racism that ultimately plagued UT's football program. This can be demonstrated through McLean's account of a game against Memphis State University, during which a member of the opposing team vocalized a racist remark. Quote, "Okay, y'all, look out. Here comes Uncle Tom into the ball game. I guess he think he's going to do something." During the same game, McLean additionally recalls being belittled by relentless racial slurs emanated by fans of the opposing team, such as that displayed on the screen. McLean was not alone in his struggles combating racial turmoil. Players such as Tennessee linebacker Jackie Walker have also come forth with horrific stories of callous treatment from fans who, as Walker recalls, threw objects from the stands. Linebacker coach Lon Hurstburn recalls events that transpired on their way to the 1970 Sugar Bowl. Quote, "We stopped at a restaurant and they wouldn't serve us. You can't fight all that. More important than anything, you could be an example, and a good example." In the midst of large-scale amounts of racial turmoil, Condredge Holloway was born on January 24th of 1954 in Huntsville, Alabama. Growing up, Condredge, like many young boys, dabbled in a plethora of sports, including basketball, baseball, and football.
I saw him play basketball in high school. The guy who was the basketball coach at my little rural high school won the state championship in 1967 or 68, and then went to Lee High School in Huntsville, where Condredge Holloway went. And we all went down to see his team, and there was Condredge Holloway playing as a point guard. And we had never seen an athlete as good as that.
Soon thereafter, Holloway was pursued by multiple athletic recruiters, including UCLA basketball coach John Wooden and Tennessee assistant coach Ray Trail, who practically lived in Huntsville during Holloway's senior year of high school. Both Alabama and Auburn expressed interest in Holloway, but neither intended for him to play as quarterback. Crimson Tide coach Bear Bryant was brutally honest with Holloway, ultimately revealing to him that, quote, "Alabama was not ready for a black quarterback." When asked to reflect upon his rejection, Holloway stated, quote, "I respect Bear Bryant for telling me the truth. I'm not mad. A 17-year-old kid from Huntsville, Alabama. He told me the truth." Through this act of decorum, Holloway prefaced the magnanimous manner in which he would handle the racial adversity in the years to come. After much consideration, Holloway ultimately decided to commit his talents to the University of Tennessee with a secured position in the quarterback role. Although redshirted his freshman year due to collegiate rules at the time, in his second year at Tennessee, Holloway would be named the starting quarterback for the Volunteers and the SEC's first ever African-American quarterback. Throughout his athletic career, Holloway proved time and time again to be an excellent addition to the Tennessee Volunteer football team. His impressive accomplishments on the field spoke for themselves, as he was named the MVP of both the 1972 Bluebonnet and postseason Hula Bowls, dubbed as an All-SEC quarterback in 1973, and obtained a total of 4,068 offensive yards in passing and rushing, the ninth best in UT history.
He had a nickname called the Artful Dodger. That nickname was because he was hard and elusive, hard to catch, and he had some great runs during that. He compiled over 3,000 yards in passing. He had a 25-9-2 record as a starting quarterback, and we had 3 consecutive bowl appearances with Condredge. So those stats mark up during that time.
Although prosperous with his endeavors on the field, off the field, Holloway faced the harsh realities and ideals that circulated throughout the South, specifically that of racism. Quote, "I never let it get to the point where I had to do something about it. When you get letters, they don't sign it. You know what you're dealing with. To confront that would cause a bigger problem. Not to accept it, but deal with it and go back to your everyday life." End quote. "I never went out on the field thinking I was Martin Luther King or anything like that. I went out to do my job and play football. That was as much self-survival as anything." However prevalent these hostile messages proved to be, Holloway's willingness to turn the other cheek and focus all of his attention to the game of football happened to be one of the reasons that the racial turmoil embedded within the university dissipated. Holloway himself even admitted that the amount of racial tension was directly related to whether the team was winning or losing. Thus, Condredge Holloway's leadership on the football team and the 3 consecutive successful seasons he forged allowed Vol fans to rally around the racially diverse team and further dissolve the racial barriers that were compiled in the earlier years of the 50s and 60s. In fact, Holloway's impressive performances earned a deep sense of reverence within Tennessee football supporters and newscasters alike. John Ward even elaborated that, quote, "There are not many stars, but Condredge Holloway was a star. And so he was the player that people expected to come back even if his leg was broken."
Condredge was a special athlete. He had a lot of gifts, particularly his ability to lead. He was a great leader. He also earned respect by how he played the game. And so generally, from my standpoint as sports information director, all our players were just athletes. There weren't any definition of what they are. They were athletes, and Condredge was an athlete. He happened to be a black athlete, but yet he was one of our athletes, and he was treated that way through all of his teammates. And his play on the field was accepted many, many times by the fans. He was excellent. He could do things on the field that endeared him to them, and he also was the first of what I call the legends. At that time, there weren't a lot of athletes who were signing autographs, and people wanted pictures with athletes and things like that. And Condredge was in that mix of the first one of those guys where somebody wanted him to sign something, sign my helmet, sign my shirt. So he was a legend before there were legends, and he endeared himself to that because he was very personable.
Through this mutual respect, Holloway emerged in history as an invaluable member of the University of Tennessee's athletic department. He is still an intricate part in their program and is still widely admired for his successes both on and off the field. Even so, from Condredge Holloway's perseverance, 6 starting African American quarterbacks would follow him and earn their spot in history. Successors such as James Streeter, Tony Robinson, Sterling Hinton, Jerry Colquitt, T. Martin, and Joshua Dobbs compile most of the entire list of African American quarterbacks that have started in their respective football season openers since Holloway's time. Of those 6 men, 1 was considered for the Heisman Trophy, 1 led the Vols to a national title, and 1 led the university to win 2 bowl titles in 2 years.
I think what he did, being the first black quarterback in the SEC, certainly opened that avenue that others within the Southeastern Conference felt like that now, that's what we need to start doing because he was so successful. His abilities were beyond that at the time, and he led our team very well. And certainly he was I'd say a pacemaker, so to speak, at that time for quarterbacks.
Ultimately, the University of Tennessee utilized Condredge Holloway as an avenue through which racial tensions could be compromised, and are thus forever grateful to him for the conflicts his presence at UT worked in part to resolve.